All right, my name's ShawNshawN. I do art on ShawNshawN.co and I do specials on eBay. Today I'm going to review Glass. So if you don't know, Glass is the third movie. First there was Split, and then they had Unbreakable. Now you have combining those two storylines into Mr. Glass. So in the original three, you have one for Split. It's this Wendell Crumb character, and he's crazy, and then it turns out he's been kidnapping people, and he finally eats them as kind of the beast. And so that was kind of this really nice story that develops over time, and you don't know whether to feel sorry for the guy or who's the villain, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, dude, this guy's crazy. Unbreakable is with David Dunn, who's Bruce Willis, and basically this train crashes, and he survives, and then he's questioning his life and everything, and it kind of has this psychological impact of that story. Now, in this case, you kind of fast forward like 20 years. David Dunn, who's Bruce Willis, is still kind of tracking down villains, and he's heard about these girls disappearing. It turns out Wendell Crumb, this guy with multiple personalities, is now working again, kidnapping girls. He's going around, he's hitting people, and he can kind of psychologically sense them when he bumps into people. And he tracks down this guy, and he's about ready to like capture him. And then all of a sudden, boom, the cops show up. They send him away to the mental institute, and you're like, oh, what happened here? And when they get to the mental institute, Mr. Glass is there. So this kind of pulls into Mr. Glass realizing he has these other one villain and one superhero, and he's like, this is interesting. What can I do with these two guys? Unbeknownst to the hospital, Mr. Glass has been escaping secretly. Now, so eventually Mr. Glass figures out a way. So at the same time as the three are there, the Dr. Staple, this woman who's running that mental hospital, she's trying to convince all three of them that they're just deranged. They're normal people with just derangement, thinking they have superhuman abilities, and after a while they're starting to believe it. Some of them don't want to submit, so she's kind of using this laser lobotomy on their brain to try and fix them. And then right after that happens, Mr. Glass finally figure out a way to escape from the hospital, and David Dunn realizes that he needs to escape out of his room. Actually, Mr. Glass sets him up so he can get away too, and they're gonna have this final big battle on this brand new skyscraper. So there's a lot of build up towards they're gonna escape to the skyscraper, and then they don't even make it to the skyscraper. They just have this big fight right on the hospital grounds, which is realistic. That they would have just, they would have kind of broke out and started fighting there, and then the police would be there in 2 seconds. So that's not unrealistic, but it's kind of like a real letdown because you're expecting like special effects with the skyscraper blowing up and some kind of craziness. It's kind of a delusional, so you're thinking, well, they're just deluded characters. So it kind of Shia LaMouffe kind of playing between, are these guys delusional? Are they really superheroes? So there's kind of like this aspect that he's trying to balance off. I think he does okay. One thing I didn't like about this is the villains never get to confront the other villain, which is Dr. Staple. And so that's kind of a letdown. You figure she gets killed or something, or at least taken out or injured or something, and nothing. She just doesn't get anything. All her guards are killed, her guards are killed, but she kind of gets off scot-free, so that's very unsatisfying. Also, the Mr. Glass character is not much of a character arc. He's just locked away, and then he kind of breaks free, and he's this diabolical mastermind, but there's not really too much in there. There's a little bit as far as his childhood flashback, but I don't know, just could have been way more better, I think, with Mr. Glass. Additionally, they have these outside characters that are kind of allied with either Wendell Crumb, his first victim, is kind of allied with him. The mother of Mr. Glass is kind of allied with him. On Dr. David Dunn, it's his son is allied with him. And they kind of help out these guys, but not really. They kind of fall prey to Dr. Staple and kind of help Dr. Staple convince these guys they're not superheroes, which is kind of lame in a way. You'd figure they would somehow figure out a way to undermine and they kind of do in the end, but not really. It's not very satisfying, the Act 3. So yeah, it's just parking lot thing versus the skyscraper battle, so you're not really satisfied there. And then there's a final twist, which, Shyamalan's known for a twist, and I think the best movie he did it is probably The Village, and also in Sixth Sense. So there's a really, like, the story bit this way, and then there's a surprise twist, and you're like, what? Here they try to do a surprise twist, but it's not much of a surprise twist, I would say. It's just unsatisfying. I think if the Dr. Staple had been more goody two-shoes and then revealed as more a villain in the end, it would have been more satisfying. But you feel like she's a basically neutral good character. You don't feel like she's bad at all. So that it really takes away from what could have been in the third act. I think if she had seemed good, but then had actually evil intentions, if there was more of a tension there, that would have been much better, I think. Also, additionally, if there had been kind of a flip between Wendell Crumb, the Beast, and then somehow becoming the good guy, and it doesn't. So that's a disappointment as well. David Dunn is the hero, as you expect. In a way, it just kind of plays straightforward as you would expect, and there's some twist, but it's not a big enough twist to really make the third act. So the third act, I would say, kind of falls apart. It sews together the three stories well, and as far as it makes sense why they put Split and Unbreakable and Mr. Glass together. So that's satisfying. However, the final battle scene wasn't that big, and it was kind of a suspense thing, and you're waiting for them to escape, and then they escape, and then it's just outside the hospital. So that's a little bit lame, I would say, for an ending. It should have been more, I don't know, something just like way over the top, like The Village was. So as far as the acting, obviously James McAvoy, who's playing all these multiple personalities, does really great with playing these multiple personalities, which he had in Split, and then he knocks it out of the park again here. So that's really good. Bruce Willis plays David Dunn, and that's pretty straightforward, I would say. Mr. Glass is fairly straightforward, although he kind of plays this villain who's behind the scenes, an intellectual villain, which they do a little bit of that. Like, he plays dumb and then he's smart, actually. But they could have played that a little better, I think. It would have been a little bit more interesting that he had accomplished more besides just being in this mental hospital and he escapes, but that's basically all he does in the film. He does one more thing, but not much of a twist. I know I liked the movie, but I think it just kind of fell off the rails in the third act. Anyway, I hope you liked the review. Give me a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe below. And see you in the next movie review. Thanks, guys.